They say every child deserves love, but Chike learned early that the world doesn't always give you what you deserve. His mother, Adana, died when he was only 7 years old. She died giving birth to a baby that never drew breath. In one terrible night, Chike lost both his mother and the sibling he would never know. His father, Mr. Okafor, a successful businessman, was consumed by grief. The house that once rang with laughter became a tomb of silence. For 2 years, Chike and his father navigated their sorrow together. The boy would wake up at night, crying for his mother, and his father would hold him, both of them weeping in the darkness. But grief, they say, makes people do desperate things. When Chike was 9, his father remarried. Her name was Obioma. She came into their lives like a storm disguised as a gentle rain. At first, she seemed kind, bringing Chike sweets, braiding his hair, telling him stories. But Chike's father was blind to what the boy saw in her eyes when they were alone. You see, Obioma had a secret. She had 3 children from a previous relationship, all living with her sister in the village. She had come to the city with one purpose, to secure her future and the future of her children. And Chike, brilliant, beloved Chike, stood in her way. The boy was exceptional. At school, he collected awards like other children collected stones. Mathematics, English, science, he excelled in everything. Teachers praised him. Neighbors stopped his father on the street to commend him. Even Chief Okonkwo, the wealthiest man in their community, had taken interest in the boy, promising to sponsor his education all the way to university. But every medal Chike brought home was a knife in Obioma's heart. Every praise was a reminder that this boy, not her own children, was receiving the future she wanted for her family. She smiled when Chike showed her his report card. She clapped when he won the state mathematics competition. But at night, when Mr. Okafor was away on business trips, she would stare at the boy with eyes that held something darker than hatred, something that felt like fear. Because Obioma knew that as long as Chike shined so brightly, her own children would live in his shadow. So she made a decision that would alter the course of many lives. In the village of Amafor, there lived a man they called Babalawi Ezenwata. People whispered his name with a mixture of fear and reverence. He was known for things that decent people didn't speak about in daylight: dark rituals, ancient curses, spiritual manipulation. Obioma traveled to see him on a Friday evening when the sun was bleeding red across the sky. She brought with her a bag containing Chike's school uniform, a strand of his hair taken from his comb, and money. More money than she had ever spent on anything in her life. "I want to bind him," she told the Babalawi, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Not kill him, just make him ordinary. Make people start loving him. Make them see him the way I need them to see him." The Babalawi studied her with eyes that seemed too old for his face. "You want to tie his star," he said, "to bind his destiny and turn his light into darkness. Yes. This is powerful work, and once done, it cannot be easily undone. The boy will suffer. Everyone who once loved him will turn against him, even his own father." Obioma's jaw tightened. "Do it." The ritual took 3 days. Obioma returned home with a black soap and specific instructions.
She was to bathe Chike with this soap for 7 consecutive days, telling him it was a special soap for skin brightening. The innocent boy, trusting his stepmother, complied. On the 8th day, everything changed. It started subtly. Chike's best friend, Emeka, suddenly stopped sitting with him at lunch. His teacher, Mrs. Adebayo, who had always praised his essays, marked his latest composition harshly, accusing him of copying. At home, his father snapped at him for minor things, leaving a cup on the table, laughing too loudly, breathing too heavily. Within a month, the transformation was complete. Chief Okonkwo, his sponsor, came to the house one evening. Chike, excited to show him his latest award, ran to greet him. But the chief's face twisted with something like disgust. "Mr. Okofor," he said coldly, "I've been thinking about my sponsorship of your son. I believe I've made a mistake. The boy has a spirit of entitlement about him. I'm withdrawing my support." Chike's father didn't even defend him. He simply nodded, as if this made perfect sense. At school, things spiraled further. Chike was accused of stealing another student's calculator, a calculator that mysteriously appeared in his bag. He swore he didn't take it, but no one believed him. The principal, who had once displayed Chike's awards in his office, expelled him with barely a hearing. "There's something off about that boy, something dark," people began to say. The boy who had once been celebrated became the boy everyone avoided. The curse worked exactly as Babalawi Ezinwata promised. Chike's star was bound, his light extinguished, his destiny tied in knots that seemed impossible to unravel. And through it all, Obioma watched with satisfaction, already making plans to bring her own children to live in the house, to take the place that should have always been theirs.
If you've never been hated by everyone you know, you cannot understand the specific kind of death it brings. Not the death of the body, but the death of the soul. Slow, agonizing, complete. Chike lived this death every day. After his expulsion, his father looked at him as if he were a stranger. Obioma no longer pretended kindness. She made him sleep in the boys' quarters, a tiny room behind the main house that smelled of mildew and had rats scurrying in the walls at night. She worked him like a slave. At 4:30 every morning, he had to wake up and sweep the entire compound. He washed clothes by hand, scrubbing until his knuckles bled. He cooked, cleaned, ran errands. When Obioma's own children finally moved in, 3 pampered teenagers who treated Chike like a servant, his workload doubled. His father never intervened. It was as if Mr. Okafor had forgotten he had a son. "Please, Papa," Chike begged one evening, kneeling before his father. "I'll work hard. I'll make you proud again. Please." His father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "You've brought enough shame to this family. The neighbors think I've raised a thief and a troublemaker. You're lucky we're still feeding you." On Chike's 16th birthday, a day no one remembered, Obioma called him to the living room. Her children sat on the sofa, smirking. His father sat in his chair, face blank. "We've made a decision," Obioma announced. "You're old enough to take care of yourself now. We are releasing you from this house. You have until tomorrow morning to leave." Chike felt the world tilt. "But, Papa!" His father said nothing. Simply nothing. "Papa," Chike's voice cracked, "please, I'm your son, your only son. Mama died giving birth to me, and this is—" "Don't you dare speak about your mother," his father's voice exploded through the room. "You've done nothing but disgrace her memory. Get out of my sight." The next morning, Chike left the only home he'd ever known with nothing but the clothes on his back and 20 naira someone had left on the kitchen counter, probably by accident. He was 16 years old, alone, and convinced that he was cursed. For 2 years, Chike survived on the streets, doing odd jobs, carrying loads at the market, washing cars, begging when desperation squeezed too tight. He slept in uncompleted buildings, ate from trash cans when the hunger became unbearable, and slowly forgot what it felt like to be treated like a human being. Until one day, he walked past a barbershop called Royal Cuts. The owner, Master Joseph, was outside smoking a cigarette. Something made him look at the thin, dirty boy standing at his doorway. "Please, sir," Chike said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "I can work, I can sweep, clean, anything. I just need a chance." Master Joseph should have said no. Everyone else had. But he looked into the boy's eyes and saw something. A drowning man grasping for air. "Come in," he said. "Let's see what you can do." For the first time in years, Chike felt something close to hope. Master Joseph's barbershop was small but respectable, with 3 chairs and a steady stream of customers. Chike started as a cleaner, but he watched everything. How Master Joseph held the clippers, the angle of the blade, the way he shaped beards and carved hairlines with artistic precision. At night, when everyone had gone home, Chike would practice. He found discarded clippers and practiced on balloons, then on his own hair, studying techniques from old magazines left in the shop. He slept on the floor of the shop, saving every kobo Master Joseph paid him. Within 6 months, Master Joseph let him try his first real customer, a young boy whose mother was in a hurry. Chike's hands trembled, but the haircut came out perfect. The mother tipped him 50 naira, and Chike cried in the bathroom afterward, clutching the money like it was salvation. His talent grew rapidly. There was something about the way Chike worked. Precision, creativity, genuine care for each customer. Word began to spread. "That young boy at Royal Cuts, he's got magic in his hands," people said. But Chike's success carried the seeds of his next destruction. Jide, the senior barber, who had worked at Royal Cuts for 5 years, began to notice. He noticed how customers started requesting Chike specifically. He noticed how tips that used to go to him now went to the boy. He noticed his own relevance fading. Envy is a poison that works slowly, killing goodness drop by drop. One evening, after Chike had completed a particularly spectacular haircut for a wealthy customer who tipped him 2,000 naira, Jide made his decision. He waited until Master Joseph was away on a supply run. Then he took money from the shop's cash box, 3,000 naira, and hid it in Chike's bag. When Master Joseph returned and discovered the missing money, Jide was ready. "Master, I hate to say this, but I saw Chike looking through the cash box earlier. I didn't want to believe it, but—" They searched Chike's bag. The money was there. "I didn't take it," Chike protested, his world collapsing again. "Please, Master Joseph, you know me. I would never—" But the evidence was clear. And perhaps something of the old curse still lingered, because Master Joseph's face hardened in a way Chike had seen too many times before. "Get out," Master Joseph said quietly. "I trusted you. I gave you a chance when no one else would. And this is how you repay me? I'm innocent. Please. Get out." And just like that, Chike was back on the streets, the brief light in his darkness extinguished. He wandered for hours, his mind spinning with despair. The betrayal hurt worse than hunger, worse than homelessness. Just when he thought he had found his place, the curse, whatever Obioma had placed on him, had struck again. As night fell, Chike found himself at the Riverside, in the part of town where abandoned buildings clustered like tombstones. There was one house in particular that everyone avoided, an old colonial structure that had been empty for decades, surrounded by tales of ghosts and mysterious deaths. People said if you entered that house, you would never leave alive. Chike stood at its entrance, staring into the darkness within. He thought about his mother, buried in a grave he'd never been able to visit. He thought about his father, who had forgotten how to love him. He thought about every betrayal, every loss, every moment of suffering. And he thought, maybe not leaving alive is exactly what I need. He stepped inside. The abandoned house smelled of decay and forgotten time. Cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains, and every step Chike took raised dust that danced in the moonlight, streaming through broken windows. He found a corner in what used to be a bedroom, slid down against the wall, and closed his eyes. If death lived here, he would welcome it. If ghosts wanted his soul, they could have it. It wasn't worth much, anyway. He must have fallen asleep, but when he opened his eyes, everything had changed. The room was darker now, impossibly dark, despite the moon outside. And in that darkness, something moved. "Why have you come here, child?" The voice was like silk and smoke, feminine but ancient, beautiful and terrifying all at once. Chike's heart hammered, but he found he wasn't afraid. You can't fear death when you've been inviting it. A figure materialized from the shadows, a woman, or something that looked like a woman. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, with eyes that held centuries and skin that seemed to shimmer between solid and transparent. I came here to die," Chike said simply. "Oh, child, you came here because your destiny brought you. Tell me, why does one so young seek death?" And Chike told her everything. About his mother, about Obioma, about the curse that had turned everyone against him, about the barbershop, the false accusation, the endless cycle of rising and falling. He spoke for what felt like hours, and the spirit listened, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You have been bound," she finally said. "You have been assailed. Someone has tied your star. I can see the spiritual chains around you. Dark magic, jealous magic. This is why everyone turns against you." "Then I really am cursed," Chike laughed bitterly. "What's the point of living if I'm destined to be hated?" "What if I could change that?" The spirit moved closer, and Chike felt the temperature drop. "What if I could break those chains, give you wealth beyond imagination, success beyond your dreams? What if I could make you the most sought-after barber in this entire region?" "Nothing is free," Chike said. "What would you want?" The spirit smiled, and her teeth gleamed like pearls in the darkness. "Smart boy, you're right. Nothing is free. Here is my offer. I will transform this abandoned house into the most magnificent barber shop this city has ever seen. I will fill your hands with skill that seems supernatural. I will break the curse upon you and draw customers to you like moths to flame. You will become wealthy, respected, powerful. And in exchange? Hair," she said simply. "Every customer who sits in your chair, I want one lock of their hair. You will collect it in a special container I give you. At the end of each month, you will leave that container here, in this house, at midnight." Chike frowned. "Just hair, that's all." "Just hair," she confirmed. But something flickered in her eyes, something that whispered of secrets untold. Chike should have asked more questions. He should have demanded to know why a spirit wanted hair, what she would do with it, what the true cost might be. But he was 18 years old, broken by life, exhausted from suffering. And so he said the words that would change everything. "I accept." The spirit's smile widened. "Then we have a covenant. Sleep now, child. When you wake, your new life begins." Chike felt sudden, overwhelming drowsiness. His eyes closed, and he fell into a sleep deeper than any he'd known. When he woke, the sun was streaming through windows that no longer had cracks. The floor beneath him was tiled, cool and clean. The walls were painted a fresh cream color. The cobwebs were gone. Chike scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. The abandoned house had been transformed. The room he'd slept in was now a spacious reception area. Beyond it, through an open doorway, he could see what looked like a professional barbershop. Not just professional, but luxurious. He walked through in a daze. There were 5 barber chairs, each one sleek and modern, the kind he'd only seen in magazines. Mirrors lined the walls, perfectly clean and gleaming. The floors were polished marble. Air conditioning units hummed softly. In the corner was a waiting area with leather couches and a flat-screen TV. On the main counter sat a black crystal jar with a silver lid, and next to it a note in elegant handwriting. For the hair, never forget our agreement, and Chike, never tell anyone about our deal. If you speak of it, the covenant breaks, and everything returns to dust. Chike picked up the jar, feeling its weight. Just hair. He could do that. He opened the front door, and his breath caught. Outside, where there had been overgrown weeds and broken pathways, there was now a beautiful entrance with a paved walkway leading down to the riverside. A large sign hung above the door, carved from dark wood with gold lettering. Riverside Cuts, the finest barber shop in the city. As if summoned by the sign's appearance, a man walking along the riverside path stopped and stared. Then another person noticed, and another. Within an hour, Chike had his first customer. A businessman who said he was in the area visiting a client and couldn't believe such a beautiful shop existed here. Chike picked up the clippers and something extraordinary happened. His hands moved with a surety and skill that exceeded even his own training. It was as if the Spirit had poured knowledge directly into his fingers. The haircut was perfection. The man looked in the mirror and gasped, "Young man, this is the best haircut I've ever had in my life. How much?" Before Chike could answer, he heard a whisper in his mind. "Charge what you're worth." 5,000 naira, sir. The man didn't even blink. He paid 6,000 and told Chike to keep the change. As the man left, Chike carefully collected a small lock of hair and placed it in the crystal jar. One down. The future rising before him like the sun after endless night. The golden year. Success came like a flood. Word spread through the city faster than seemed natural, though Chike was too grateful to question it. Within a week, Riverside Cuts had a waiting list. Within a month, Chike had hired 3 other barbers to help with demand. Within 3 months, he was the talk of the town. That boy at Riverside, he doesn't just cut hair, he transforms you. And it was true. There was something about Chike's work that transcended normal barbering. Men left his chair feeling more confident, more handsome, more themselves. Politicians came to him before important speeches, musicians before big performances, businessmen before crucial meetings. The money poured in. Chike moved out of the back room and rented a proper apartment. Nothing extravagant, but clean and safe, with a door that locked and a bed that didn't have rats. He bought new clothes, ate 3 meals a day, saved money in a bank account that grew fatter each month. But every month at midnight, he would return to the shop with the crystal jar now full of hair, hundreds of strands from hundreds of customers. He would place it in the reception area, and by morning it would be gone, replaced by an empty jar. He never saw the Spirit again, But sometimes, late at night, when he was alone in the shop, he felt her presence, a cold touch on his shoulder, a whisper in the air. 1 year after opening Riverside Cuts, Chike was a wealthy man. He had expanded the shop, adding a spa section and a luxury grooming area. He employed 12 people.
His face appeared in newspapers and magazines, the young barber revolutionizing the industry. Celebrities began visiting, government officials, foreign businessmen. Chike's waiting list was now 3 weeks long, and people paid premium prices just to secure an appointment. He bought a car, a modest Toyota, but his first car nonetheless. He sent money to charity organizations helping street children, remembering his own days of hunger and homelessness. He was living the dream. But then, one Saturday afternoon, his father walked into the shop. Chike was with a customer when he looked up and saw Mr. Okafor standing in the waiting area, looking around with wide eyes. Their gazes met, and Chike felt something crack in his chest. Rage, grief, longing all twisted together. His father looked older, grayer. There was something in his face that might have been shame. When Chike finished with his customer, his father approached. "Chike," he said softly, "son, I'm not your son. You disowned me, remember? I don't know what happened to me. To us. It was like I was under a spell. Your stepmother, she stopped, seeming confused. I woke up one day, maybe 6 months ago, and it was like waking from a terrible dream. I realized what I'd done, what we'd done to you. I've been searching for you for months. Then I saw your picture in the newspaper." Chike wanted to turn him away, wanted to make him feel the abandonment, the betrayal. But looking at his father's face, he saw something he recognized, a man emerging from darkness, confused by what he'd done while under its influence. The curse. It had affected his father, too. "Why are you here?" Chike asked. "To apologize, to beg your forgiveness, to—" His voice broke. "To try to be your father again, if you'll let me." They stood in silence, the shop's chatter fading around them. "I can't yet," Chike finally said. "I can't forgive you yet. But you can come back. We can talk. Maybe in time." His father nodded, tears streaming down his face. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Chike, your mother would be so proud of you. I know I don't deserve to say that, but she would be." After his father left, Chike went to the bathroom and cried for the first time in years. Not tears of sadness, but of release. Something had broken open inside him. Perhaps healing was beginning. But he didn't notice the woman who'd been sitting in the waiting area for hours, watching him with eyes that burned with hatred. It was Obioma. She had found him, and she was not pleased.
Obioma couldn't believe her eyes. The boy she had cursed, the boy she had destroyed, was not only alive, but thriving, wealthy, successful, celebrated. It shouldn't have been possible. Babalawo Ezenwata had promised the curse was unbreakable. She returned to Amafor village that very evening, fury burning in her chest. The Babalawo was in his shrine, surrounded by candles and strange symbols carved into the walls. "The boy has broken free," she shouted without preamble. "Your curse failed." The Babalawo looked up slowly, and his eyes widened. That's impossible. A binding like that doesn't just break, unless— He stood, moving to a bowl of water covered in a white cloth. He removed the cloth and stared into the water, his lips moving in silent incantation. What he saw made his face go pale. "You foolish woman, what have you done? What are you talking about?" "The boy has made a covenant with something old, something powerful. I can see its mark on him, protecting him, feeding him power." The Babalawo looked at Obioma with something like fear. "The curse is still there. I can see it, wrapped around him like chains. But there's something else now, something that's using those chains as anchors for its own purposes. Whatever entity he's bound to, it's not fully of this world. So break it. Kill him. Do something." "You don't understand. The kind of entity that can override my binding, you don't break covenants with such beings. They break you." He grabbed Obioma's arm. "Stay away from that boy. Whatever deal he's made, it will consume him eventually. These things always do. Let it run its course." But Obioma couldn't let it go. Every day the rage festered. Her own children were struggling. One had dropped out of school, another couldn't hold a job, the third was involved with bad company. Meanwhile, Chike was featured in magazines, driving nice cars, living the life that should have been impossible for him. She began to watch him. She followed him at night, saw him enter the shop at midnight once a month with a jar, saw him leave without it. She saw strange shadows moving inside the building when it should have been empty. She heard whispers in languages she didn't understand, and she made a decision. If she couldn't destroy Chike through curses, she would destroy him through exposure. She went to Pastor Jeremiah, the fiery preacher whose church attracted thousands every Sunday. She told him about the midnight rituals, the supernatural speed of Chike's success, the strange occurrences at Riverside cuts. "That boy is working with demons," she declared, her voice trembling with false righteousness. "He's sacrificing something. People need to know. Their souls are in danger." Pastor Jeremiah loved nothing more than a good spiritual battle, especially one that would fill his church and increase his offerings. The following Sunday, he preached a sermon titled "The Barber and the Devil," never mentioning Chike by name, but describing Riverside cuts in enough detail that everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. "There is a place in this city where a young man has made a deal with dark forces. He takes something from every customer, something precious, something spiritual. The success you see is not from God, but from the enemy. Beware, beware, beware." The rumors started like a trickle and became a flood. "Have you heard? Riverside Cuts is a shrine. They say he sacrifices the hair to marine spirits in the river. My cousin went there and had terrible nightmares afterwards. He's using juju to make his business succeed. I heard he's in a cult. They meet in that shop at midnight." Chike watched his customer base begin to shrink. Religious people stopped coming first, then cautious people, then anyone who heard the rumors and didn't want to risk their souls for a haircut. Within 2 weeks, the shop that had been bustling was half empty. Within a month, Chike had to let go 4 of his 12 employees. The waiting list that had stretched for weeks disappeared overnight. He thought about confronting Obioma, about defending himself publicly. But what could he say? The rumors were essentially true. He had made a deal with a spirit. The specifics were wrong, but the core was accurate. One night, As he sat alone in the shop, staring at the black crystal jar, the spirit appeared for the first time in over a year. "You're troubled," she said, materializing from the shadows like smoke taking form. "I'm troubled," Chike said tiredly. "People think I'm evil. They think I'm sacrificing humans or selling souls. My business is dying." "Then tell them the truth," the spirit said with a cold smile. "Oh, wait, you can't, because speaking about our covenant would break it, and everything would return to dust." She moved closer, her form flickering between solid and ethereal. "Funny how that works, isn't it? Why didn't you tell me this would happen? I told you you would be successful. I told you you would be wealthy. I never promised it would be easy or that it would last forever." She circled him like a predator. "Besides, you're forgetting something important. Our deal isn't about your comfort. It's about the hair." "What are you doing with all that hair? Why do you want it? What are you building?" The spirit's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too many. "Hair carries DNA, memories, essence. Every strand is a thread connecting me to that person, to their life force, their dreams, their fears. I'm building something, Chike, something that requires connection to hundreds, thousands of people. Your success was just a means to an end." Cold dread washed over Chike. "What are you building?" "A doorway," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "I've been trapped between worlds for a long time, centuries, actually. Hair is powerful in spiritual matters. It's why people are so cautious about where they dispose of it, why witches and sorcerers covet it. Every strand you've collected for me is another thread I can use to pull myself fully into your world. Once I have enough, once the doorway is complete and I cross over," she trailed off, but her eyes gleamed with ancient hunger. "What happens when you cross over?" "I become flesh again, solid, permanent. And all those peoples whose hair you've given me, they become anchors, vessels, potential hosts." She had a smile that was terrible to behold. "You tricked me," Chike whispered, horror blooming in his chest. "I offered you a deal, and you accepted without asking the right questions. That's not trickery, that's your own desperation." She began to fade back into shadows. "Continue collecting hair, Chike. Whether you have 5 customers or 500, our covenant stands. Every month, at midnight, that jar must be full. That was our agreement. And if you break it," her voice became a hiss, "if you break it, not only does everything disappear, but everyone's whose hair you've already collected will suffer the consequences of a broken covenant. Their nightmares will become real. Their fears will manifest. Choose wisely." She disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Chike alone with the horrifying realization of what he'd done. He hadn't just sold himself. He'd sold access to hundreds of innocent people. And if he broke the deal to save his own conscience, those same people would suffer for his choice. He was trapped in a cage of his own making. For 3 days, Chike didn't open the shop. He sat in his apartment, paralyzed by guilt and fear. Every person whose hair he had collected, politicians, businessmen, families, children, he'd connected them all to something dark and ancient without their knowledge or consent. The weight of it crushed him. On the 4th day, there was a knock at his door. It was his father, and he looked worried. I heard the rumors, Mr. O'Coffer said. Everyone has. I came to tell you that I don't believe them. I don't care what people say. You're my son, and I know your heart. Those words, simple words after years of rejection, broke something open in Chike. Before he could stop himself, the whole story came pouring out. About Obioma's curse, about the abandonment, about the spirit and the deal, about what he'd learned, about the doorway and the innocent people now connected to something evil. His father listened in growing horror, his face going pale. "This is my fault," he kept saying, tears streaming down his face. "All of this is my fault. If I had protected you, if I hadn't let Obioma poison our family. Chike, she admitted it to me. Last month, when I finally served her divorce papers, she was angry and she bragged about it. How she went to that traditional priest, how she paid him to bind you, how she laughed watching you suffer." "It doesn't matter whose fault it is," Chike said, his voice hollow. "I made my own choice. I accepted that deal, and now that spirit is using me to hurt innocent people. If I break the covenant, they suffer. If I continue it, she completes her doorway and becomes, I don't even know what, something terrible. Then we break the deal the right way. There is no right way, I told you." "There's always a way," his father interrupted firmly. "We just have to find it. And I know someone who might help." He told Chike about Mama Adayese, a powerful prayer warrior who lived in a monastery 3 hours from the city. She was legendary, known for breaking curses, confronting spiritual entities, fighting battles in realms most people couldn't even perceive. "If anyone can help you, she is it," his father said. "We leave now." They went that very day, driving through winding roads into the countryside. The monastery sat on a hill, simple and peaceful, surrounded by gardens where elderly monks tended vegetables. Mama Adaese was ancient. No one knew her true age, but her eyes held the weight of centuries and the clarity of pure spring water. She sat in a small room with white walls, a simple wooden cross, and nothing else. She listened to Chike's story without interruption, her expression grave but unsurprised. "You've been tangled in 2 separate spiritual battles," she finally said, her voice surprisingly strong for someone so old. "The curse from your stepmother, which bound your destiny and turned people against you, and the covenant with the water spirit, which is far more
dangerous. Both are powerful. Both have their claws in you, but they're connected in ways you don't yet understand." "Connected how?" Chike asked. "The curse made you vulnerable. It created spiritual openings, cracks in your protection. That's why the water spirit was able to approach you so easily. Normally, a human soul has natural defenses, but yours were weakened. She saw you as the perfect tool." Mama Adeze leaned forward. "But here's what you need to understand. She's been planning this for a very long time. You weren't random. She's been watching that Riverside house for decades, waiting for someone desperate enough, broken enough to accept her deal." "Can you break the covenant?" Chike's voice was desperate. "The curse, yes, that's already weakening. Curses powered by jealousy lose strength when the cursed one succeeds despite them. Your success, even spiritually aided success, has been eating away at its power." She paused. "But the covenants are different. They're agreements, Contracts written in spiritual realms. They can only be broken in specific ways. How?
3 ways. Mama Arayeze held up 3 fingers. 1. You fulfill the terms completely until the entity is satisfied and releases you. But water spirits are never satisfied. 2. You give back everything the spirit provided, freely and completely, nullifying the exchange. Or 3. You expose the covenant publicly, warn everyone involved, and accept the consequences. Spirits gain power through secrecy and deception. Truth is their greatest enemy. But she said if I speak about the deal, everything I gained would disappear. Yes, the shop, the wealth, the success, all of it returns to dust. Mama Arayeze's eyes were steady, but she never said you would die. She never said the peoples whose hair you collected would be harmed by the breaking of the covenant. That's what she wants you to think. The truth is, breaking the covenant by exposing it is the one thing that can save those people. You're sure? I've been fighting spiritual battles for 60 years, child. I'm sure. She stood, moving to a small cabinet and pulling out a worn leather Bible and a bottle of oil. But you need to understand the cost. You lose everything material. You'll be back where you started. No shop, no money, no reputation. And the spirit will be angry, very angry. She may try to harm you in other ways. Chike thought about the luxury apartment, the car, the success, the respect. He thought about being back on the streets, hungry and homeless. Then he thought about the hundreds of people whose hair he'd collected, innocent people, children, families. What do I do? Tell the truth, Mama Arayeze said simply. All of it. Warn everyone, then stand firm when she comes for you. That night, Chike didn't sleep. He sat at his laptop and began making a list. Every customer he could remember from the past year. He went through appointment books, receipts, old messages. He found phone numbers, email addresses, social media profiles. It took him all night. By dawn, he had over 600 names. At 8 a.m., he started making calls. Hello, this is Chike from Riverside Cuts. I need to tell you something important about your visit to my shop. Some people hung up immediately. Some listened politely, but clearly thought he was crazy. But some heard the genuine desperation in his voice and listened. He told them everything. About the spirit, about the covenant, about the hair, about the doorway being built. He told them to pray, to seek spiritual protection, to break any connection to him and his shop. I'm sorry, he said again and again. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was agreeing to. Please protect yourself. Pray. Go to your church, your mosque, your priest. Break this connection. After 50 calls, his voice was hoarse. After 100, his hands were shaking, but he continued. He posted on social media a long, detailed confession that he knew would make him look insane. He didn't care. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. The comments were brutal. This guy has lost his mind. Clout chasing at its finest. Mental breakdown in real time. But scattered among the mockery were other comments. I went to Riverside Cuts 3 months ago. I've had nightmares ever since. My husband got a haircut there and came home different, angry, paranoid. Something was wrong about that place. I felt it. Pastor Jeremiah, seeing an opportunity, held an urgent prayer meeting that evening. Thousands came. Chike attended, standing at the back, watching as the pastor called for everyone who had been to the demonic barbershop to come forward for deliverance. Over 200 people came forward. Chike watched them pray,
watched Pastor Jeremiah lay hands on them, watched as some cried, some shook, some fell to the ground. He didn't know if it was real spiritual deliverance or mass hysteria. He didn't care, as long as they were protected. For 3 days, he made calls, sent messages, posted warnings. He contacted every news outlet that would listen. Most ignored him, but a few ran stories. Local barber claims spiritual conspiracy was one headline. On the third night, at exactly midnight, he went to Riverside Cuts for the last time. The shop was empty, abandoned by his remaining employees after his public confession. He stood in the center of the main room, looking at the barber chairs, the mirrors, the luxury he'd built. "I know you're here," he said to the empty air. "I know you can hear me." The temperature dropped. The lights flickered. She materialized from the shadows, and this time she wasn't beautiful. Her true form was revealed, something ancient and terrible, with too many joints in her limbs, eyes that were completely black, skin that seemed to writhe with movement beneath the surface.
"You broke our covenant.
Her voice was like nails on a chalkboard, like screaming wind.
You spoke of our deal.
I did, and I'm done being your tool. Whatever you're building, it ends now."
You think you can stop me?
She laughed, and the sound shattered one of the mirrors. "I already have pieces of them, over 600 connections. The doorway is nearly complete, even without you. No, a voice interrupted. Chike walked out from the back room where he'd been waiting. She was flanked by 5 other prayer warriors, all elderly, all carrying Bibles and bottles of anointing oil. "Every person this boy has warned, we have reached. Every strand of hair you've collected, we have countered with prayer and fasting. Your doorway is crumbling before it ever opens." The spirit screamed a sound so terrible that all the remaining mirrors shattered at once. She lunged at Chike, her form expanding, becoming smoke and shadow and rage. But she stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall. Chike and the prayer warriors had formed a circle around Chike, hands raised, speaking in tongues, declaring scriptures. The air itself seemed to solidify between Chike and the spirit. "You have no power here anymore. The covenant is broken. The doorway is sealed. In the name of the Most High God, return to where you came from." The spirit writhed and twisted, her form becoming less solid, more translucent. "She has existed for thousands of years. I will find another way, another desperate soul, another—" Her voice cut off as she suddenly collapsed inward, like a building imploding. The shadows that made up her form scattered, then vanished. The unnatural cold lifted. She was gone. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then slowly, the shop began to change. The paint started peeling from the walls. The marble floors cracked and dulled, returning to broken concrete. The barber chairs rusted before their eyes, leather cracking and falling apart. The mirrors that hadn't shattered went cloudy and dark. The air conditioning unit sputtered and died. Within minutes, Riverside Cuts was once again the abandoned house by the river. Chike stood in the ruins of his success and felt free. Outside, they could hear sirens. Someone had called the police about the noise, but Chike didn't care. He walked out of the building with Mama Anayeze and the prayer warriors, leaving behind the black crystal jar, now just a regular glass container, empty and powerless. His father was waiting outside, and he pulled Chike into a tight embrace. "It's over," Mr. Okafor whispered. "It's finally over." But they both knew that while one battle had ended, another was just beginning. The battle to rebuild a life with nothing but truth and hard work. The next morning, Chike woke up in his apartment to find his bank account empty. Not just emptied by theft,
The money had never existed. When he checked his transaction history, all the deposits from Riverside cuts showed as errors, reversed transactions. His landlord knocked on the door that afternoon. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but your rent actually hasn't been paid for 6 months. I want you out by tomorrow." The car he'd bought. The registration came back as fraudulent. It was repossessed within days. Every material thing the spirit had provided was being systematically erased, as if his year of success had been nothing but a vivid dream. Within a week, Chike was back to having nothing. No home, no money, no business, no reputation. But now he had a reputation as that crazy barber who lost his mind and started talking about demons. He moved back in with his father, sleeping in his childhood bedroom that Obioma had once turned into a storage room. The house felt different now, cleaned of a spiritual darkness Chike hadn't even fully realized was there. "We'll rebuild," his father said. "Together this time. The right way."
Obioma was gone. Mr. Okafor had finally divorced her, and she'd returned to her village. Her own children, suffering under the weight of the curse she'd set in motion, had abandoned her. Karma, it seemed, had found its mark. Chike had to start over completely. At 20 years old, he was back at the beginning, actually worse than the beginning, because now he had a reputation as either a con artist or someone mentally unstable. But this time, things were different. This time, he wasn't cursed. Mama Ariadne had performed a thorough spiritual cleansing, breaking every chain, severing every dark connection. This time, he had his father, truly had him, not the shell of a man controlled by Obioma's curse. This time, he had people praying for him instead of against him. He found work at a small, struggling barbershop on the other side of town, a humble place owned by an old man named Papa Emeka, who didn't care about rumors or stories, who just needed a good barber and saw something honest in Chike's eyes. "I heard all the talk," he said when Chike nervously explained his situation. "About the fancy shop, the spirit, all of it. You know what I think? I think you made a mistake, and you're trying to make it right. That's more than most people do. You're hired." Chike worked honestly. He charged fairly. He built his reputation the slow way, one satisfied customer at a time, with no supernatural help, no shortcuts, just skill, patience, and genuine care. It was hard. Some days he wanted to quit. Some days the memory of his year of luxury haunted him, the money, the success, the ease of it all. But then he'd remember the spirit's true form, the doorway she was building, the innocent people he'd put at risk, and he'd remember that some prices are too high to pay, no matter what you gain. 6 months after Riverside Cuts collapsed, on a random Tuesday afternoon at Papa Emeka's shop, Chief Okonkwo walked through the door. Chike froze, clippers in hand, mid-cut hair. The chief, older now, walking with a cane, but still commanding in presence, stared at him for a long moment. Recognition dawned slowly in his eyes. "I remember you," he said finally. "Okonkwo's boy, the brilliant student I sponsored years ago, then withdrew my support. I never understood why I did that. It was like someone else was controlling my decisions, like waking from a fog." "The curse," I said simply. "It affected everyone who cared about me, but it's broken now." Chief Okonkwo nodded slowly, as if this explanation, impossible as it should have sounded, made perfect sense. "I've been having dreams," he said, "about you, about a great darkness that almost consumed many people, and about a young man who chose to lose everything rather than let it happen. Was that real?" "Yes, sir." The chief was quiet for a moment, then sat down in Chike's chair. "I'd like a haircut," From you specifically, if you'll have me as a customer." Chike's hands trembled as he picked up the clippers. This was the man who had once promised him the world, then taken it away. But that hadn't been the real Chief Okonkwo. It had been the curse speaking through him. He gave the chief the best haircut he could. No supernatural skill, no spirit-enhanced talent. Just honest work, careful technique, the skills he'd learned through practice and dedication. When he finished, Chief Okonkwo looked in the mirror and smiled. "You're good, very good. Better than you were before, actually. There's something more genuine about your work now." "Thank you, sir. That'll be 1,000 naira." The chief paid, then added an extra 5,000 naira. "I made a promise once to support a brilliant young man's education all the way through university. I broke that promise when I was not myself. I'd like to keep it now, if you're interested. Night school, university, whatever you want to study, I'll sponsor it." Chike felt tears prick his eyes. "Sir, I'm 20. I'd be starting so late." "Education has no age limit, son. And besides, you've already had the most important education. You've learned what matters and what doesn't. The rest is just details." He supported a brilliant young man's education all the way through university. "I broke that promise when I was not myself. I'd like to keep it now, if you're interested. Night school, university, whatever you want to study, I'll sponsor it." Chike felt tears prick his eyes. "Sir, I'm 20. I'd be starting so late." "Education has no age limit, son. And besides, you've already had the most important education. You've learned what matters and what doesn't. The rest is just details." He supported a brilliant young man's education all the way through university. "I broke that promise when I was not myself. I'd like to keep it now, if you're interested. Night school, university, whatever you want to study, I'll sponsor it." Chike felt tears prick his eyes. "Sir, I'm 20. I'd be starting so late." "Education has no age limit, son. And besides, you've already had the most important education. You've learned what matters and what doesn't. The rest is just details. What do you say?" Chike thought about the abandoned house by the river, about the spirit and her promises of wealth and power with no effort required, about shortcuts and their hidden costs. "I'd like to study business management, so I can run my own shop someday, the right way, built on honesty, not bargains with darkness." "Then that's what you'll do." Over the next few years, Chike worked at Papa Emeka's shop during the day and attended night school. It was exhausting. There were times he fell asleep over textbooks, times he wanted to quit. But his father was there encouraging him. Chief Okonkwo checked in regularly. Mama Ariatse and her prayer warriors continued covering him in prayer. Even some of the customers from Riverside Cuts, those who understood what he'd sacrificed to protect them, would come to Papa Emeka's shop specifically to support him. Slowly, painfully, honestly, Chike rebuilt his life. He graduated from university top of the class, not because of supernatural talent, but because of hard work and determination forged in the fires of his suffering. He saved money, kobo by kobo. Chief Okonkwo helped him secure a small business loan. His father sold some property to invest in his son's dream. And 5 years after Riverside Cuts had crumbled to dust, Chike opened a new shop. The new shop was in the heart of the city's business district, not by the river, not in the shadows, but right on Main Street where everyone could see, where sunlight streamed through large windows and there were no dark corners for secrets to hide. The sign above the door read, "Second Chance's Barbershop."
It wasn't as fancy as Riverside cuts had been. The chairs were good quality, but not luxurious. The mirrors were clean, but not designer. The floors were tile, not marble. Everything was honest, earned, real. But there was something special about this place, something that couldn't be bought with money or gained through spiritual bargains. There was light, real light, the kind that comes from doing things the right way. Chike employed 5 barbers, and every one of them was someone with a story. Former street children, reformed addicts, young people who'd been rejected by society and needed a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, Chike told them on their first day of training. I got mine. Now I'm passing it on. Work hard, be honest, treat customers with respect. That's all I ask. Opening day arrived on a bright Saturday morning. Chike stood outside at 7 a.m., staring at the sign, hardly believing this moment was real. By 7:30, there was a line stretching down the block. Many were people who had abandoned him during the Riverside Cut scandal, who now understood, at least partially, what had really happened. We were wrong, one man said, shame-faced. We listened to rumors instead of knowing your character. We should have stood by you. Can you forgive us? Chike thought about forgiveness, how he had to forgive his father, how he had to forgive himself, how he had to forgive Obioma even though she never asked for it. He thought about how forgiveness was harder and more powerful than any curse or blessing. Of course, he said simply. Have a seat. Let's start fresh. The shop thrived, but this time the success was natural, gradual, sustainable. No supernatural boost, no spiritual shortcuts, just good work, fair prices, genuine care for customers, and word of mouth built on trust. Journalists came to interview him, not about spiritual conspiracies this time, but about his business model of hiring people society had rejected. Why do you give chances to people others won't hire? One reporter asked. Because someone gave me a chance when I was at my lowest, Chike replied. Actually, several people did. My father, after years of being lost to me. Master Joseph, at Royal Cuts, before jealousy destroyed that opportunity. Papa Emeka, when everyone thought I was crazy. Keith Okonkwo, who came back to fulfill a promise. We all need someone to believe in us, especially when we can't believe in ourselves. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, about a year after opening, a woman walked in with a young boy. Chike looked up from sweeping and froze. It was Obioma. She looked like she'd aged 20 years, worn down by life, thinner, grayer, her eyes carrying the weight of consequences. The boy with her, maybe 11 years old, looked nervous, his hair overgrown and unkempt, his clothes clean but old. The shop went quiet. Everyone knew the story. I know I have no right to be here, Obioma said, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't meet Chike's eyes. But my son, my youngest, he needs a haircut for a job interview. It's his first job, a small thing at a grocery store. But the other places in town, they're too expensive. I heard you charge fairly. I heard you help people who... She trailed off, finally looking up. Her eyes were filled with tears. I heard you help people who don't deserve help. Every eye in the shop was on Chike. He could have turned her away, maybe should have. This woman had cursed him, destroyed his childhood, stolen years of his life, put him on a path that nearly led to his destruction and the destruction of hundreds of others. But he looked at the boy, thin, anxious, innocent, and saw himself.
a child caught in the consequences of an adult's choices. "What's your name?" Chike asked the boy gently. "Chisom, sir," the boy said quietly. "Well, Chisom, have a seat," Chike said to the boy gently. "Let's get you looking sharp." As he cut the boy's hair, Obioma spoke. The words seemed to cost her everything. "I destroyed you because I was afraid," she said. "Afraid my own children would never measure up to your brilliance. So I went to that babalawo and paid him to curse you, to bind your destiny, to make everyone hate you." Tears streamed down her face. "But curses don't work the way I thought," Obioma spoke. "The curse broke me too," she said softly. "Everything I did to you came back on my own children. They've all struggled, all failed at everything they try. They've all struggled with things I can't explain, depression, anger, failure at everything they try. The oldest is in prison, the middle one is addicted to drugs, and this one," she looked at Chisom with desperate love, "this one is my last chance to do something right, to raise a child without jealousy and curses and darkness." "Why are you telling me this?" Chike asked, his hands steady as he shaped the boy's hair. "I went back to the babalawo, begged him to reverse it, but he said karma doesn't work that way. He said the only way to break the cycle was to—" she swallowed hard, "was to apologize to you, genuinely, and to accept whatever consequences come." Chike was quiet for a moment, focusing on the boy's haircut. "I've forgiven you a long time ago, not because you deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Holding on to hatred was like drinking poison and expecting you to die. I don't deserve your forgiveness. That's what makes it forgiveness, when it's given freely to people who don't deserve it." He finished the haircut, a good, clean cut that made the boy smile when he saw himself in the mirror. "How much?" Obioma asked, reaching into her worn purse. "No charge," Chike said, "but I want something from you." Obioma tensed, fear flickering across her face. "I want you to tell your son the truth. Tell him what happened, what you did, why you did it. Not to shame you, but so he learns that shortcuts and curses and trying to pull others down never leads anywhere good. Can you do that?" Obioma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I will." After they left, one of Chike's employees, a young man named Tunde, who'd been a street kid before Chike hired him, shook his head in amazement. "Boss, that woman nearly destroyed you. How did you just forgive her like that?" Chike was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I learned something during my darkest time," he finally said. "Holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness isn't about whether someone deserves it, it's about freeing yourself from the prison of bitterness. Besides," he smiled slightly, "I was shown mercy when I didn't deserve it. How can I not pass that on?" Papa Emeka, who now worked part-time at Chike's shop, having sold his old place, chuckled and shook his head. "You're too soft, my boy. That woman nearly destroyed you." "Nearly," Chike agreed, "but she didn't. And maybe her son will learn from her mistakes and break the cycle. Isn't that worth a free haircut?" Papa Emeka smiled. "You're going to change this whole community, you know that." "One haircut at a time," Chike said. That evening, after closing the shop, Chike did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He went back to the Riverside. The abandoned house was still there, still ruined, still wrapped in warnings and superstition. But in the fading light, it looked different to Chike. Not frightening, but sad. A place where desperate people made desperate choices. He stood at the entrance, remembering the broken boy that walked through that door wanting to die. "You know that, don't you? That you were never supposed to survive this," a voice said behind him. Chike turned. Babalawo Ezenwata stood there, older than when Obioma had visited him, but still powerful in presence. "The curse I placed on you, it was designed to destroy you completely. When you made that covenant with the spirit, I thought it would finish the job. Spiritual entities rarely have good intentions, and humans who deal with them rarely end well." "Then why are you here?" Chike asked. "To understand how you broke both, how you survived both." The Babalawo moved closer, studying Chike as if he were a puzzle. "I've practiced dark arts for 40 years. I've seen curses crush strong men and covenants consume wise ones. But you, young, alone, with everything against you, you somehow walked through fire and came out refined instead of destroyed." "It wasn't me," Chike said simply. "It was grace. It was people who chose to help me, even when I didn't deserve it. It was learning that the only real power is the power to forgive and to choose right even when wrong is easier." The Babalawo was quiet for a long time. "I admit, I came here to witness what I thought would be your final destruction. But instead, I'm witnessing something I've never seen: complete redemption." He turned to leave, then stopped. "The curse is gone, completely. I released it today. I don't know if that matters to you, but consider it done." "Why?" Chike called after him. The Babalawo looked back, and for the first time, Chike saw something like shame in his eyes. "Because 40 years of cursing people has made me rich, but left me empty. And seeing you, seeing what you've become, makes me wonder if I've been practicing the wrong kind of power all along." He walked away into the gathering darkness, leaving Chike alone by the river. Chike stood there as the sun set, painting the water gold and red. He thought about his mother, who died too young. He thought about his father, who'd found his way back. He thought about Obioma, broken by her own darkness. He thought about the spirit, trapped between worlds and desperate for freedom. Everyone in his story had been trapped in some way, by curses, by covenants, by bitterness, by desperation. But he had found the key that unlocked all those prisons, the choice to love instead of hate, to forgive instead of condemn, to build instead of destroy. A breeze rippled across the water, and Chike could have sworn he heard his mother's voice in it. "I'm proud of you, my son." He smiled, wiped the tears from his eyes, and turned away from the abandoned house. Tomorrow, Second Chance's Barbershop would open again. There would be customers to serve, employees to mentor, young people to inspire. There would be opportunities to show that your past doesn't have to determine your future, that curses can be broken, that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. Chike walked back toward the city lights, toward home, toward the life he'd built, not with shortcuts or supernatural help, but with honesty, hard work, and grace. The abandoned house by the riverside remained behind him, a monument to a choice he'd made and a covenant he'd broken, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from power that costs too much. And as he walked, Chike began to plan. There were other young people out there right now, broken and desperate, standing at the edge of their own rivers, contemplating their own abandoned houses. He would find them. He would give them second chances, because he knew better than anyone. Sometimes all it takes to save a life is one person who refuses to give up on you. even, especially, when you've given up on yourself. Moral of the story? The shortcuts we take to escape our pain often lead us deeper into darkness. True freedom comes not from supernatural power or revenge, but from forgiveness, honest work, and the courage to do what's right, even when it costs us everything. Your past may shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. And sometimes the greatest success is not what we gain, but what we choose to give up for the sake of our integrity. Thanks for watching.